They called me a failure. They called me a sinner. They never knew what it felt like to rot in a silent, golden cage in the heart of New York City. My name is Eleanor Vance. At 40, I was living in cold splendor. From the outside, my life was the absolute definition of the American dream. A lavish penthouse on Fifth Avenue, a private art gallery downtown in Soho, and of course, a 15-year marriage to Arthur Vance, a property tycoon whose name was boldly printed in Forbes. Arthur was a good man, a very good man. He made sure I had every piece of Cartier jewelry and every painting I desired. But he wasn't a husband. He was a premium service provider. He knew how to generate wealth, not how to generate warmth. To him, every second not spent on profit was a loss. Money could buy a mansion, but it couldn't buy a complete home. Then there was the burning void. We had been married for almost 15 years, and yet we remained childless. Every time I walked past the upstairs room that was supposed to be the nursery, the one we decorated in soft pastels years ago, an invisible hand seemed to seize my heart and crush it. That emptiness felt so real, so cold, and so utterly invasive. The pressure naturally originated from Arthur's family. His mother, Agnes, a terrifying matriarch, treated my inability to conceive as if it were a shameful genetic defect. At every charity gala or dinner party in the Hamptons, her question was always the same, delivered with a sweet, lethal tone. "Eleanor, darling, when will we get our heir? Arthur is the sole successor to the Vance dynasty. You must understand how urgent this is." It wasn't a question, it was a sentence, a stinging condemnation aimed directly at my barren womb. I had tried everything, from the top-tier in vitro fertilization, IVF, clinics in Boston to the most expensive holistic treatments in California. The result was nothing but crushing failure. I knew Arthur was tired too. I saw the shadow of exhaustion in his eyes whenever we discussed it, but he always chose avoidance. He'd suddenly get busy with his phone or utter his worn-out cliché, "We'll try again later, Elle." That sentence never had a follow-up, just an empty promise adrift between his meeting schedules and transatlantic calls. Inside this enormous silent house, in the middle of a city that never sleeps, I was rotting in my loneliness. I was a queen, trapped in her own palace. In our museum-like glass residence, there was one person who often bore witness to my emotional drama, Chris. Chris was our private driver. He was only about 23, fresh from the Midwest, with messy brown hair and honest blue eyes. Chris wasn't just a driver, he was a steadfast guardian, ready 24/7. When Arthur flew off to London or Dubai, Chris was my shadow. He was an excellent listener. I often poured out my exhaustion, loneliness, and disappointment to him. He never interrupted. He just listened, offering an occasional short response. "That must be tough, Mrs. Vance," but filled with empathy, like an oasis in the emotional desert. One night, a storm broke. Not a physical storm, but a domestic one. Arthur and Agnes had a massive fight over the phone. Arthur's voice, usually controlled, sounded furious that night. I clearly heard Agnes threaten, "If you can't provide an heir, I will find you a woman who can, Arthur." I could only choke back tears in the bedroom. After hanging up, Arthur grabbed his car keys harshly. "I need to be alone, Elle. Stay home. If you need anything, call Chris." He left, abandoning me to the deafening silence. I walked down to the garage, tears streaming uncontrollably. Chris, who happened to be cleaning the car, saw me. He didn't ask questions. He just approached me and offered a cold bottle of mineral water. "Are you all right, Mrs. Vance?" he asked softly. That night, I felt incredibly fragile. I told him everything, the pressure from Agnes, Arthur's empty promises, and the agonizing longing for a child. Chris just listened, his face serious. Strangely, just by telling Chris everything, the burden on my chest lifted slightly. I felt there was someone who genuinely cared, someone who didn't see me as a failed trophy wife, but as a wounded Eleanor. For the first time in ages, I felt not alone. From that night on, my interactions with Chris felt different. It was no longer a formal employer-driver relationship, but rather like a bond between two souls who understood each other. Chris remained professional. He never took advantage of my situation. But I was the one who gradually started seeking his presence. I often asked him to join me on the back terrace, overlooking the small garden Arthur had bought only to raise the property value. We would sit side by side at dusk. We didn't always talk. Sometimes we just enjoyed the silence and the view. The only other person in this house was Martha, our housekeeper, a middle-aged widow. Martha often saw me talking with Chris. One afternoon, she approached me with a bitter smile. "Mrs. Vance, you're lonely, aren't you?" she asked. I just smiled wryly. "Me too, ma'am. Since my husband died, it's been so quiet. Life just feels the same day after day," she said, staring blankly ahead. Martha often talked about how much she missed having a man in her life. In every one of her stories, I saw my own reflection. Women struggling through life in bitter solitude. One night, a severe thundersnowstorm hit New York. Power went out across the entire area. I, who was usually brave, was seized by suffocating fear that night. The roaring wind and striking lightning made my heart pound uncontrollably. Arthur was in Miami and my cell phone was dead. I panicked. Then I remembered Chris. I sent him a brief text message. He replied, saying he was also scared in his small driver's room in the basement. I felt guilty for bothering him. 15 minutes later, there was a soft knock on my bedroom door. "I'm sorry, ma'am. I was worried. It's so loud. Are you scared?" Chris asked, standing there with a small flashlight. I couldn't hide my fear. He asked me to calm down, then sat on the sofa. We talked about trivial things, but his presence made me feel much calmer. Suddenly, Martha arrived. "Mrs. Vance, Chris, don't stay here. My room is safer, in the back. Not too many mosquitoes," she said. I hesitated. Finally, the three of us moved to Martha's small, warm, and cramped room in the back. That night, we spent time sharing stories. After Martha fell asleep, Chris and I stayed awake. Chris talked about his dream, to open a small garage back home. His eyes sparkled as he spoke. I saw a passion in him, a fire I had never seen in Arthur. I felt a deep connection that night. I felt so close to him, closer than I should have. I don't know what made me do it. Perhaps the loneliness that had lasted too long. Perhaps because I felt Chris could give me what Arthur couldn't. Warmth, attention, and the acknowledgement that I existed. The next morning, guilt mixed with a strange, sharp passion. I avoided eye contact with Chris, afraid he could read every thought in my mind. That afternoon, Arthur called. His voice was weary. "Elle, I'm coming home the day after tomorrow. I have important business. Sorry about last night. I didn't mean to leave you, but I really needed time to think." I just agreed. My voice caught in my throat. Suddenly, my phone rang again. An unknown number. I hesitated to answer, but my hand moved on its own. "Good afternoon, ma'am. Sorry to bother you. I'm Tiffany. I'm Arthur's wife." My heart seemed to stop beating. Wife? "Arthur is beside me now. He asked me to apologize for not telling you sooner, but I am 5 months pregnant, ma'am, and Mrs. Agnes asked Arthur to bring me to New York immediately. The world seemed to crumble. 15 years of my effort, my sacrifice, my own dreams, all for nothing. Behind it all, Arthur had secretly remarried. Pain, betrayal, and rage flooded my being. I immediately hung up. I ran to my room, locked the door, and wept uncontrollably. 15 years felt wasted. That evening, Chris texted, asking if I was okay. I didn't reply. Later that night, after I had calmed down, I called Chris to the living room. "Chris, stay with me. I need to talk." Chris came with a worried look. He probably knew something was wrong. "Did you know Arthur has another wife?" I asked, my voice hoarse. He was silent. I looked into his eyes, and I knew. He already knew. "You knew, didn't you? Is that why you acted strange this morning?" I asked again. "I'm sorry, ma'am. I didn't feel right telling you," he replied softly. I told him everything I had heard from Tiffany. "What am I supposed to do, Chris?" I asked. "I feel fragile, so broken. I want to be happy. I want to have a child. I'm tired, Chris. I'm tired of fighting alone." Chris didn't answer. He just looked at me with deep empathy. That look felt like the warm embrace I had never received from Arthur. In that silence, I made a decision that sounded insane, mad, and against all norms. I wanted revenge. I wanted to show Arthur that I too could have what he had. I too could have happiness and a child. And Chris was my only hope. I looked deeply into his eyes. "Chris," I said, my voice trembling, "I want you to help me. Help me get what I want. I want a child, Chris, a child I can call mine, and I know you can make it happen." Chris was silent, his face confused and shocked. "Mrs. Vance, I know it's crazy, Chris. I know it's wrong, but I can't hold it in anymore. I need happiness. I need a child. You can give it to me," I pleaded, my voice barely above a whisper. We argued that night. He refused, saying it was wrong and would ruin everything. But I kept pleading, kept forcing him. I told him all the pain I felt. I didn't want to live in the void anymore. Chris finally relented. Not because he agreed, but because he saw how broken I was, how desperately I needed this. He nodded slowly. "All right, Mrs. Vance, I'll help you, but please never regret it." That night, amidst the darkness that enveloped the house, I found a glimmer of light, a light born from a wrong path, but a light that finally made me feel alive again. 2 weeks passed. Arthur finally came home. He brought Tiffany, the young woman who got called me. Tiffany looked very young, innocent, and her belly was already showing. She smiled warmly, but I only returned a thin, cold smile. Arthur tried to explain, but I refused to listen. Strangely, I didn't feel rage. I felt petty for him. He had never known how broken I had been all this time. I decided not to care about Tiffany and her baby's presence. I acted as if they didn't exist, focusing only on myself and the thing I knew was coming soon. 3 months later, I felt something different. I visited the doctor. The result made me cry hysterically. I was pregnant. Pregnant after 15 years of waiting. My tears fell, not from sadness, but from a burst of joy. Finally, after all this suffering, I was going to have a child. Arthur and Tiffany were shocked when I told them. Arthur looked immensely happy. He didn't care who the biological father was. He only cared that we were going to have a child. He became incredibly attentive. Tiffany also seemed genuinely happy. "I will treat your child as my own, Mrs. Vance," she said sincerely. I didn't care if she was sincere or not. All that mattered was that I was going to be a mother. 9 months later, the cry of a baby boy broke the silence of our home. I named him Ryan. He was my little angel, born from a great mistake, yet from true love. Since Ryan's birth, my life completely turned around. I no longer felt empty. I had Ryan, who always laughed. He was my world. Arthur became a very good father. He spent most of his time with Ryan. He also grew closer to me. We could talk about many things. I never asked about Tiffany and her child, and Arthur never brought them up. We lived as if nothing had happened. A few months later, I got a call from Martha. She had moved back to Texas. "Mrs. Vance, I'm married," she said happily. "I married a wealthy widower here. He's so kind, and I'm pregnant too now." I smiled, happy for her. "And Chris, ma'am," Martha continued, "he also went home. He didn't want to be a driver anymore. He said he wanted to continue his engineering degree and open a garage. He said he wants to be successful, so one day he can come back to New York and start a new life." My heart felt both warm and sore. Chris. He was gone. He left without words, without a message, without a promise. I knew he would never return. He was part of the past I had to leave behind. He was the hero who gave me hope. I could only pray he found his happiness. Now Ryan is 1 year old. Arthur and Tiffany also have their baby boy. We all live together in this house. There is no fighting, no significant jealousy. We are a unique, large family. I don't know if this was the right path. I don't know if I should regret taking it. But what I do know is that I will never regret having Ryan. He is the miracle born from a lie, but he is the miracle that healed all the wounds in my heart. Loneliness and a strong desire can push a person to do things beyond reason, but sometimes happiness comes from an unexpected path, a path that might look wrong, but can lead us to what we truly need. I found my redemption in the arms of my little angel.